For a lot of people in the world today, life is a day-to-day struggle to make ends meet. To pay the bills, to pay your taxes, to feed your family. For people suffering in extreme poverty, any chance to get ahead, to get something that you need for free, is an opportunity that's not going to be passed up. And even if that opportunity is risky, there's a good chance that you're going to take the risk, because what other choice do you have? But time and time again, this proves to be fatal. Because it's not just you looking to take the risk, it's hundreds of other people as well, jostling, pushing and scrabbling for the spoils. And when that something you are trying to get hold of happens to be petrol from a tanker of spilt fuel, you can almost guarantee that there will be some fool who decides to stop in the middle for a cigarette break. If that sounds too ridiculous to be true, here are 3 examples which prove just how dangerously idiotic some people can be. Number 1. Bahawalpur crash, Pakistan. At around 6 AM on Sunday, June the 25th, 2017, a tanker carrying approximately 50,000 litres of petrol was en route from the southern port of Karachi to the Pakistani capital, Lahore. Just outside the city of Bahawalpur in the Punjab district, it overturned whilst travelling at high speed on a tight bend. The driver had apparently fallen asleep at the wheel. The overturned tanker ruptured, and thousands of litres of petrol began pouring out onto the road and into a nearby roadside field. As news of the accident spread, a local mosque announced from its rooftop loudspeaker the location and the condition of the crashed tanker. This sent a crowd of local residents, farm workers and motorists rushing to the scene with containers, looking to scoop up as much spilled petrol as possible. This mad scramble continued for up to 40 minutes, with a crowd of over 500 men, women and children repeatedly ignoring police warnings to clear the area. Eventually, the inevitable happened. According to Rana Mohammed Salim, Deputy Commissioner of Bahawalpur District, somebody lit a cigarette and the spilt fuel caught fire, leading to the tanker's explosion. In the resulting carnage, 148 people were killed instantly and hundreds more terribly burned. The wounded were rushed to nearby hospitals and clinics, but for some it was too late. Over the next 48 hours, many of the injured, including the truck driver, succumbed to their burns, bringing the final death toll to 209. Most of those who perished at the scene were unable to be identified and were simply buried in a mass grave nearby. The road around the explosion was littered with burnt-out cars, motorcycles and hundreds of pots, pans, bowls and jerry cans. Famous Pakistani cricketer and politician Imran Khan described the Bahawalpur explosion as a national tragedy of epic proportions. Number 2. Sanji village, Democratic Republic of Congo. On Friday, July the 2nd, 2010, eyewitnesses reported seeing a speeding petrol tanker attempting to overtake a crowded minibus on the road outside of Sanji village, in the eastern region of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Details are scarce on this incident, but from what little I've been able to glean, it seems that the edge of the road under the tanker's wheels crumbled away, causing it to overturn, and the tanker skidded to a halt close to the centre of the village. In a terrible twist of fate, the village was much more crowded than usual, as hundreds of nearby residents were crowded into 1 or 2 simple roadside shacks to watch a World Cup football match on TV. In the confusion of the crash, either the tanker ruptured or some locals took the opportunity to siphon out the fuel. It's not exactly clear how the fuel ended up getting out of the tanker, but one way or another, fuel was soon pouring out onto the road. Once again, local residents rushed to the scene with buckets, pans, plastic jerry cans, pretty much anything that could gather up the precious liquid. Within minutes, 100-strong mass of people were crammed around the stricken tanker, desperately trying to collect as much fuel as possible. And this chaos continued for about an hour, by which time the football match on the television was over. Then, one of the bar patrons, wandering outside first-hand to see what all the commotion was about, got too close to the tanker with his lit cigarette. The fumes ignited and the tanker exploded in a huge fireball, ripping through the flimsy makeshift shacks and the crowded market area. Eyewitness Umoja Ruzibria stated, "There were so many men, women and children around when it happened. It was so terrible. We lost so many family and friends." The official toll was 230 fatalities and well over 200 injured, although these numbers are just an estimate. The actual figures could in fact be much higher. As many of the victims were burned beyond recognition, they were also buried in a mass grave just outside the village. Head of the Red Cross in the Congo, James Reynolds, said that the Sanji village disaster was a terrible scene and tragedy for these poor people who didn't have very much in the first place. Number 3. The Akube Road Incident, Nigeria. On the 12th of July 2012, on Akube Road, just outside the Nigerian oil centre of Port Harcourt, a lorry carrying petrol swerved to avoid 3 vehicles which were parked in the middle of the road. Losing control, the truck skidded off the road and ended up lying on its side in a ditch. With the tanker now ruptured, the petrol began leaking out. Hundreds of people immediately flocked to the scene, carrying buckets, cans, whatever, to go and scoop fuel. Within minutes, dozens of Nigeria's motorcycle taxis, known locally as Okadas, had also arrived, the riders desperately scrambling to get some free fuel for their bikes. For over an hour, the tanker lay on its side as the crowd around it grew larger and larger. Kingsley Jafour, a local motorcycle taxi owner who was in two minds about whether to risk it, said, "At about 7:30, while I was inside trying to decide whether or not to go to scoop fuel or not, that is when I saw that the tanker exploded." Now, the cause of this explosion is somewhat disputed. Some eyewitnesses stated that it was while some members of the crowd were attempting to remove the truck's battery that a spark caused the ignition, while other eyewitnesses said it happened as a man stopped to light a cigarette right in the middle of the crowd who was scooping fuel. In any case, the result was truly horrific. The blast and the fireball incinerated 95 people on the spot and caused severe burns for many hundreds more who were crowded around the leaking tanker. Wounded were ferried off on motorcycles, many returned to their villages for treatment. The final death toll for the Akube Road tanker explosion is estimated as at least 120, although no one really knows for sure just actually how many people died in this tragedy. In a country with such huge oil reserves and income, it seems beyond the pale that so many still live in such dire poverty that they would risk their lives to scoop a bucket full of petrol. Yeah, it's not the first incident of its kind, nor, I suspect, will it be the last. The Nigerian government has promised many times to spend more money on infrastructure to improve the road conditions and safety, and every year money is allocated in the budget for such roadworks, and yet somehow the actual work just never seems to get done. So there you have it, 3 terrible tragedies. Hundreds of people killed, burned and scarred for life. And all of it completely preventable. Nobody had to die. Yet in the scramble and the crush for some free fuel, common sense and regard for one's own safety seem to just go out the window, with predictably tragic results. Sadly, the 3 cases I've documented here are just the tip of the iceberg for this kind of incident. There are dozens of cases just like this. I don't know about you, but it seems to me to be a pretty sad state of affairs when people who are just trying to get by and put some food on the table are willing to risk their lives and the lives of their children for something so basic as a can of petrol.